And so we can see all about the ripple effect. Like, hey, we're seeing some downward price pressure we talked about. As Brandon pointed out, we're seeing some downward rent pressure on there as well. So like as far as like the softest spot in the market right now, at least in residential, it is condos. So if you're if you're looking for opportunities out there are opportunities in condos out there because like there's a lot of people selling, a lot of people own these condos for, 10, 15 years and they just want to sell the cash out. Well, Happy New Year, podcast listeners. I want to welcome you to our first market updates for the year. Now, we're actually going to review the December data from 2024, but not much really changed in that from December to January here. So we can do a good recap of 2024 and also talk about what we expect to see in 2025. So we're going to do a deep dive down one of the trends that stood out in 2024, big disparity between homes and condos. So we're going to dive into prices and rentals on that. And then we're going to talk about some conversion strategies here, actually some real life rentals that someone owns the podcast, converting it from a long-term to a midterm rental. And we'll talk about just some general trends with what's going on with the 10-year mortgages. So I've got Brandon from Keyrenter. Good morning, Brandon.
Good morning.
And Troy from Nova Home Loans. What's up, Troy?
Not too much. Chris, how about yourself?
Doing great, man. I'm very excited.
Yeah, I'm excited for 25 too.
I'm excited for 25. I'm excited actually about the topics we're talking about today too. We all came with some ideas and kind of converged on some same trends. So we'll start with a high level on the Denver market trends. And Jeff from Denver cannot join us, and neither can Jenny from Colorado Springs. So we'll do some light trends and just talk about Denver this month. But I'm pulling up the DMAR stats for year over year. So the biggest thing I want to focus on first is the active listings. So this is how much inventory is on the market. So in December of this year, we had 6,900. Last December, about 4,900. So more than last year, but November dropped from 9,300 to 68. And I'm going to scroll down here to this graph. So I like this graph a lot. So the green line is residential, so everything combined in the market. And you can see just these huge seasonal trends here of what the market does during seasonality. So coming down here, we're looking at December 23 right here, and there's this trough. If you guys aren't, watching this, I flipped over YouTube or best describe it, but, it goes up and comes down just like waves. And so in 2024, this year, the active listings definitely peaked as far back as this graph goes, all the way back to, December 15. So you can see here where we've been at the highest peak we've been for, about a decade now, if not more. Now, the trough here is still falling based on this data. It'll start coming up in early springtime, typically speaking. The trough is below the high point from the last few years as well. So it's coming down quite a bit to where active listings have dropped. I was really curious to see, was active listings going to continue to stay really high or was it going to drop? That was like one of the big things I was watching. And I was expecting a drop, but I was not expecting this big of a drop in inventory. I don't know if you guys got any commentary on the market or just like this trend in general.
Yeah, it looks like the biggest drop. Hard to exactly map that out, but yeah, it's something to expect seasonally, some drop, but that's pretty significant. And there weren't enough sold to account for that. So it's a lot of expireds too, right?
Yeah, one of the data things I was following talked about there is just the biggest amount of expired listings. It's been like this for years and years. I can't remember the amount, but it was definitely like, double digit growth or triple digit growth from what it had been to like, I think a couple thousand or a few thousand. It's a lot more expired listings. Yeah. And I thought if this inventory stayed very high, and I'm pointing at the peak of here from a couple months ago, that's where I think we would potentially see, major pressure on prices. Now we have a little bit of pressure, but the fact inventory is dropping a lot, I don't think we're going to have this huge pressure of prices because inventory is not sitting incredibly high. We are still at below average inventory, right, for Denver in general. So interesting dynamic on here.
And it looks like from past years, it doesn't typically like rebound right back up. It's kind of stays low, at least for a little
Yep.
A month or two, something like that.
Yeah, and this is all okay. The best time to sell is, come, usually March, April, February, a lot of times, best time. So people ramp up for springtime and inventory goes up. So we'll see what this looks like. But so with that in mind, I think we won't see any major downward pressure on prices in general. I think 2025 is going to be a lot like 2024, maybe like marginally better. I was saying that until the 10-year spike the other day.
Didn't play nice.
But I still think like 25 will be slightly better in terms of like I say slightly better, not quite as like, we won't see a much of like negative rent growth. Right. And I think prices have, come down a little bit and they'll continue to stay steady and strong.
Right. Yeah. I would agree with that too.
Yeah. Because inventory just tells a lot of story. Hey, what's the market doing? Now, the other data point that really gets interesting, if I can find this graph or this chart, it's back up here. It's what we're seeing between detached, so your typical single family detached home, and condos over the year. So in 2024, prices for single family homes are up about 4%. Prices for condos, depending on the data source, down anywhere from -2 to -6% in the Denver metro area. So on an average, we've been seeing, I think, like a 2%, 3%, year over year increase is what we're looking at. But detached is slightly positive, and condos are slightly negative. And historically, we have seen prices on houses appreciate about 6.5% a year. Condos have been 5.5% a year. So these lag some. But I was interested to see that single family prices are going up, condo prices are going down. Did that surprise either of you guys?
Not really.
Not really. Why?
I just think with condos, they've become a bit more difficult to finance. I mean, the pressure that we've been seeing over the last 6-9 months really coming into play is the insurance on the condo complexes and making sure they have the adequate and appropriate insurance requirements that the mainstream lending channels require. So Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. So we've seen some deficiencies there, and hopefully they'll get that corrected to make the financing more available. So warrantable condos are still kind of tough to come by. So yeah, I think there's some pressure on the financing side, which is going to impact their value, because the more people you have available that can buy them and finance them, the more demand you're going to have, the better value you're going to have. Right?
Yeah. And HOAs have really jumped up this year with insurance and other things. But
and that hurts your qualifying too, right? Yeah. So because that counts in there, those heavier HOAs, and there's been a lot of increases. I'm sure you've been dealing with that too on your side of the fence, Brandon, with these HOAs having to bump up to accommodate the heavier cost of the insurance.
What have you seen in the rental market? Because we were talking some stats before, Brandon, and you pulled an interesting stat for rental growth.
Yeah, so kind of the same story, not as rosy, I guess, overall, because houses are detached for us were down 1%. This is on the rental side from the Zillow data. So down 1% year over year. But then condos and apartments are down 11%. So they're really pulling. So overall, we see prices down 4.5%, and it's condos and townhomes really pulling, condos and apartments were grouped together in this data, pulling that down. And then townhouse is actually up 2%. So that was the one segment there that saw a little bit of increase on the rental side. But yeah,
so townhouses up 2%, single family detached down 1%. Condos and multifamilies down 11%.
Right.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So that's big movement. I mean, I remember years ago looking at some data that showed typically what we'd get is long periods of rent growth and then periods of just rent stagnation, right? And it wasn't very often that we would see significant like rent decrease, but to see, 4.5% over, 12 months of data, I find that kind of surprising. But again, it's all driven on the condos and apartments, and just probably we've talked a little bit about that dynamic, but there were all a lot of these apartment complexes are 5-6 years in the making. So you have to make decisions to construct this on the information you have then. Well, we know a lot has changed since COVID, and we've seen some of the migration slow down in Colorado and all of that. So I think it's just that's still coming, those are still coming online. They still have to find tenants for those. And the condos have trouble keeping up. I think maybe what's surprising for me is I just like, where is the bottom here? It feels like these have been soft for quite a while. And so it's just surprising. We're still feeling it, and it's still kind of continuing to drop and be soft. So hopefully we've reached something like the bottom, and now there's like a good, I guess I think of it as like, what's the difference between what someone's willing to pay for an apartment that's newer with good amenities versus an equivalent square footage condo without great amenities? So yeah, just like, what's the spread there? And we've seen that spread growing, and yeah, I just wonder when it kind of stops.
When do you think it will be?
It feels like we're about there, right? Like it feels like it's affordable once again. If you're willing to live in like a 1960s condo in Capitol Hill, it's fairly inexpensive to do so. Like you're in the $1,200-$1,300 range. So yeah, I hope that it kind of settles in there and things are easy to rent there. It doesn't take you 60 or 90 days to get that kind of rent for it.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think we're about there as well, just based on like, the number one, the law of averages always kicks in, right? We've had hyper growth, price and rent growth for 10 or 12 years. And then like, we're going to have like well below average rent growth, maybe some pullback as well. Mm-hmm. The other thing I'm really interested to see how this plays out is a lot of that, new inventory. It'll be finishing coming online for the most part in like 2025 here, and there's nothing coming on it, like all the big multifamily.
Yeah, that's going to have an impact.
And a lot of like the CoStar data and commercials, so they say, hey, go into like 2026, they expect, because demand's still there. It's just this glut of supply. So I'm curious how much the condos is it, with just like that downward pressure on us multifamily with some, hey, 2 months of concessions, free rent concessions coming in, like it's going to put downward pressure on rents. Yeah. So I'm kind of curious how much that's a part of it.
Yeah.
So I agree. I think we're kind of at like the bottom, early recovery stages, from like the macro standpoint.
Yeah.
And it's just been a very soft bottom with, in some areas, a small pullback.
Yeah.
And part of the reason I want to keep diving onto here is, and this is interesting because like Brandon pulled the stat, Troy's worked on a few deals with condos, and with some wins and some deals didn't come together with the issues we talked about. And then one of my clients reached out earlier a week or so ago and has a condo of about 20 condos scattered around Denver Metro. And I'd say a lot of times these are, a little bit nicer locations, nicer properties, not the typical condos we've talked about in the past, or, I've talked about kind of using like as example. So like, not bottom, but they're decent, and, pretty good location condos, a lot around that $250,000, $300,000 price point. Has about 20 condos in there, and he acquired a bunch from 6, 7, 8 years ago type time frame, and now he wants to dispose of them. Just wants to kind of like trade up, to bigger property, takes money off the table, just invest in like less hands-off stuff. And so we talked about, he's like, hey, can you help me sell this as a portfolio package? I was like, well, I can. I don't think you'll like the news though. Mm-hmm. Because we kind of put together a high-level plan. I want to share it with the audience to show it. So, hey, we got about 20, we'll say 20 condos for simplicity. Sell them as a portfolio, which, hey, sometimes people can sell a group of, condos or a group of single family homes as a portfolio. And a lot of times they trade anywhere from like, I'd say a 10 or 20% discount if you did not sell them individually. So that's kind of like saying, hey, if you want to sell a big bulk, like everyone's going to take, it's going to be a little bit less money for everyone, both the buyer and the seller. But now with like where the condo market's at, like, I think it'd be way more than a 20% price discount. I haven't, that's just based on my feeling and talking to other agents out there, investors, but like, I think it'd be like, geez, probably a 30% type discount.
Yep.
But then, hey, look at that option. Like, that's not attractive. Again, he's not like, there's not motivated, not distressed. Just, hey, I want to take some equity I made and turn to other stuff. Another thing we talked about was selling like smaller chunks to investors, maybe 2 or 3 condos at one time to like a smaller landlord. And I think there's an option for that. But again, it's going to be like the condo market's soft right now. I don't know what demand would be. And coming down to like for this case and for other people out there that have large portfolios, this is usually the best option in markets like Denver is sell each property individually. Because there are investors out there who will buy, and there's owner occupants.
Right.
The owner occupant pond, well, is an ocean compared to the investor pond, right?
Yes.
It's just much bigger out there.
And the financing too.
Yeah.
For the owner occupied condo purchase is more robust than what it is for an investor purchase financing. You get limited resources for that.
And so again, that's, what that does is it's a bigger pain in the butt. But by, hey, as leases expire, go in there and do what you need to kind of optimize, a cleanup and refresh for getting, kind of like top dollar for that market, sub-market right there. But also greatly complicates doing 1031 exchanges. Because rather than trying to sell 20 at once and go into, a big multi or, something like that, it's okay, we got to time a bunch of these and try to time it on there. So, there's some pros and cons on there that, he is weighing and every investor weighs out there. But like, selling a portfolio, selling condos right now in general is tough. Right. And Troy, I know we have a client and he had a condo listed so he could sell to go out there and buy the next house hack.
Right. And that really handicapped him.
Yeah. And
significantly.
Talk about why.
Yeah. Well, he was a little bit of a unique situation with his VA financing availability because the condo was soaking up some of his eligibility for that VA guarantee. And so it really handicapped what he could do on his subsequent property purchase. So once he liquidated that condo, then he'd have full eligibility and it would have really greased the wheels for the purchase of the next property that he was looking at doing. But yeah, it was a huge struggle to get that thing under contract. He didn't buy it with us when he originally did it, and he kind of looks back with some regret on it, but it is what it is. And so the hope is to get it priced right this spring and get it sold. Then he can get onto a good house hack from there. But yeah, those just they did everything they could this last spring, but it just wasn't happening. So we're hoping this coming spring will make a difference.
So did he put a tenant in there?
He's got a tenant in there now, but yeah, it's a little bit upside down from a cash flow standpoint, but it's better than the alternative. And then he's saving money with that and can sock away a bit more for the purchase he's coming up on. Yeah.
So looking at the just the notes here as well, Katie on the Envisioning team helped put together a lot of the research and outline the notes here, and so she talked a lot like fellow agents that plays in the condo market and does portfolios. Hey, what's temp check with everyone, right? You always go out there and see what other people are getting. One agent suggested as low as 50% discount for the entire portfolio.
Wow.
Are you serious?
Yeah, like that that was like, hey, may have to go as low as that. He was saying that would be like his like.
Then you could get some people interested.
Yeah, and they would just buy it, and what they would do is they'd spend the next year, as leases turn, they would just sell the properties individually.
Right. Yeah. That's the way
so I think so far as investors still figuring things out, but like best option, say we might be able to sell a couple like small chunks here and there, where hey, it makes sense for a smaller investor, someone do a 1031, or hey, numbers make sense. But the biggest thing is hey, sell them individually, or wait a year or two. And then it might be a much better conditions, I think, for the condo market then to potentially sell as a portfolio to maximize it. But then that's a year or two of, operating and opportunity cost as well. So lots of trade-offs out there.
And you could run into the same problems next year, not knowing exactly where everything's going to be at.
Interesting.
And so we can see all about the ripple effect. Like, hey, we're seeing some downward price pressure we talked about. As Brandon pointed out, we're seeing some downward rent pressure on there as well. So like as far as like the softest spot in the market right now, at least in residential, it is condos. So if you're if you're looking for opportunities out there, there are opportunities in condos out there because there's a lot of people selling, a lot of people building these condos for, 10, 15 years, and they just want to sell the cash out, or there might be some people who are upside down. It's a little more motivated seller, but like I see them on, the RE Colorado or MLS. If you go on there and negotiate and really do some underwriting on the complex, how's the complex doing? What's their insurance? There are some good deals out there.
I agree.
Now, I don't have anything specific right now. I'm just saying in general, like that's how you find like, hey, what's the market saying? Hey, the market's seeing drawback right here. Look for opportunities.
Yeah. How can you leverage that?
Yeah.
Favor?
So harder to sell side right now on the buy side. Definitely some opportunities.
Is there any outlook that there will be relief on like the financing side or that kind of thing? Like, is this recognized as a big enough problem that they'd intervene to like soften guidelines or anything like that?
Nothing I've seen, and I could be unaware of something that's being talked about, but from what I'm gathering is that they're going to hold fast to that just because it changes the risk profile, right? So I think they're kind of holding their guns on that. But you never know if it becomes a big enough issue. It is an issue, but is it big enough?
Yeah.
But great question.
And another stat, we'll pull you, Troy, back into this stat. We were talking before, you and Jeff, you the lender, Jeff the agent, you guys have 3 clients under contract.
Right.
And what asset class do you have under contract?
They are doing multi-unit. They're doing fourplexes.
Yeah, so 3 fourplexes.
Owner-occupied, house hack, 5% down deals, and they number out really well, even with our current rate environment and situation we're in. Jeff's done a stellar job negotiating the deals. We've got a lot of seller credit coming into play that's really leveraging to get improvements done to the property, but also buy down that interest rate, take care of the closing costs. They're getting in pretty light with their cash up front. Of course, they've got to at least have their 5%. In some cases, they'll have all the closing costs covered and then credits to do some improvements to work with. And again, they pencil out great once you rent out those other 3 units, and we'll probably do some deeper dives on those in the future.
Yeah,
once they close.
What part of town?
Boy, a little peppered all over. I don't get too into where the direct one's Aurora. I think Denver. Yeah, they're all metro area properties for sure.
Yeah,
the one out in Aurora looks really good too.
Yeah. And so this brings up another thing, talking about, year-end trends and all this. And again, it's always interesting. Hey, look at the data and look at real life case studies. We're doing deals, they line up. Another soft part of the market is multifamily, right. Mostly commercial stuff, but also residential, 2, 3, 4 units.
Right.
That segment, I'd say, is the next softest after condos. In terms of rents, and also that's where we've seen some of the greatest softness in prices. I don't think they've, and then seeing that, hey, deals that people are buying, that shows, hey, that's where some of the best deals are. Now, in this case, there's 2 things for house hackers, because the 5% down conventional really actually just makes that work extremely well right now. Yeah. And also for like traditional landlord investors, more putting down 20, 25% type down payments. That's where we see a lot of investors go through who are more like, hands-on, wanting to be operators out there. Is, hey, in the small multifamily, especially for, we usually talk about fourplexes on there, there's good opportunity on there as well. So if you're out there looking to buy anything, hey, we're seeing downward pressure on here in both rents and prices. Condos, I would put, I think better opportunity in fourplexes than condos, but there's opportunities in both, with a lot of investors looking at fourplexes.
Well, and I'd also add to that, I think a lot of the big play that's being utilized on those 4 units is leaning into the Section 8, the government affordability stuff, which really gives you above market rents. They're not going in with market rents in mind to make those properties work. And so they're really, Jeff has really been playing that card well, and that's been working out well for a lot of the clients we've been working with. So, you get some above market Section 8 rental renters in those other units. And I think some of those are even vacant. So you're not inheriting tenants. You don't have tenants to take over. There's some of those that you're going to have to work some of those out that are currently in there, but that's going to make those properties work really well for them once they get them optimized.
All right, guys. Well, this has been another great podcast. I checked off kind of my agenda items and trend items. Any dangling data points or trends on your guys' notepad?
Yeah. The only thing I can say is rates haven't done us any great favors. The 10-year's been pushed up a bit. Year over year, we're probably up close to 0.5%. We're kind of mid 6s. We're more upper 6s. But deals are still happening, right? Yeah. Things can still be done. You can create a deal like Jeff has done with some of these 4-unit purchase deals that make sense and will serve well into the future.
And I have to retract my statement. There's one thing I forgot. Brandon, you're converting a rental to a medium-term rental. Yes. I teased at the beginning. I want to chat about it, and somehow I crossed off my notepad. We did not.
Yeah.
So tell us the story there, please.
Yeah. So this is one that I've owned, I think, 10 years or something. It's a little condo in Capitol Hill, an old converted mansion. I own like the smallest unit in the building. I've never confirmed this, but it feels like it was the old like caretaker's quarters kind of in the, ground level on it.
Yeah.
So 540 square feet, something like that. It does have a garage spot, which is kind of unique.
And like one bed area. Or studio?
One bed. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, just looking at the numbers, a tenant kind of broke the lease early, so thought it would makes some sense. It seemed like there was some real upside to do midterm on it. So going to give it a whirl in the process now of getting furniture in there. And yeah, so basically it was, what I'm looking at is like the most recent rent on it was $1,380 or something in that.
That's for long term.
For long term.
So long term, about 1,300s.
Yep. And I think that might have been a little under market, but again, it's a tough time of year with that everything. So, yeah, I think we're shooting like 1,800 to 2,000 on midterm as a target. It's going to be a little more seasonal and that kind of thing.
Is that what you're expecting, like monthly revenue after vacancy? Or is that
no? That would
line?
More be like top line. Yeah. Okay. So I know there's some expenses in there and that kind of thing, but yeah, I don't know. Felt like,
what have you pro forma for? Like, hey, if you're getting $1,380 in rent, and when you get that top line, and ultimately cash flow after expenses, what's your projecting for like cash flow increase? Do you have off the top of your head? Like just even like a back of the napkin.
My goal is to kind of $300 to $400 more a month. If I can average that, then I can pay back the furniture and that kind of thing and be ahead on it after a couple of years. So,
okay.
I didn't spend a ton of time poring over spreadsheets on this. It didn't feel that risky. I mean, worst case scenario in a year or 2, 3, I could convert it back. And, I can't imagine I'd lose a lot of money on it or anything.
What's your furniture cost? Or, kind of like make ready cost?
Yeah. I think I'll be at about 6,000, something like that.
Oh, okay.
So it's a small place. So 6,000 to 8,000 was kind of what I budgeted on that.
Well, we're gonna do a deeper dive on those numbers here, because that's one of the strategies is like we're seeing 25 of these conversion strategies, and especially like 1 or 2 bedrooms seem to make sense for medium term rentals. And the exciting thing is Brandon is the owner and CEO of Keyrenter Denver, and they are in the process, or I guess you guys just launched a month or 2 ago, your medium-term rental property management division. So first time I've been I would say an established property manager, do it. So I'm excited to see the numbers. And also last month we did a property walk at one of the properties you manage right there at Edgewater. Your team came out. We had like 15 or 18 investors with us. It was really cool to come see. So if anyone out there has interest in medium-term rentals, let me or Brandon know, because we're doing some property walks, and we're also going to do some just spreadsheet analyses. And those are about the 2 best things to understand, hey, is a medium-term rental conversion right for you? So if interest, let us know. We'll invite you next property walk and future webinars where we dive into Brandon's conversion and a few other properties as well.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah. I'm excited to, it's always fun in like the new market. Like, I mean, change is rough. Change sucks. We all know that. But like, it's always like, I enjoy the game. Like, hey, what's the next trend? Where's next opportunity? Like, let's find it and let's go it. Yeah. And so like, I enjoy that, especially, hey, we're in the early part. If you establish the early part in the early phase of the trends, man, just ride that for 10 years. It can be so lucrative. So I'm excited to do a deep dive in the midterm rentals with you.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right. Well, Troy, we'll officially sign off now. Troy, thank you. Brandon, thank you. It's a great podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
Thanks, guys.
All right, we'll see you guys next month. If you guys have any questions, comments, whatever, let us know out there. Any other data you're seeing or case studies, we love hearing from you. See you guys next month.